Hey guys, it's Syama here. We are talking today about some really interesting questions that you guys have sent in through our newsletter. A lot of questions around, hey there, Kelsey, a lot of questions around how businesses should be planning and looking into their strategies right now while we're kind of in the middle of this pandemic. And hey there, Kelsey. Hey, Jonathan. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming. Hey there, David. Okay, so let me continue. So basically, there are a lot of questions that have been coming in terms of how time and energy and what you guys should be up to right now for business planning and strategy. What's really exciting is we're starting to see, hey there, we're starting to see a lot more states start to open up. It seems that, businesses will be looking at getting back to normal, hopefully within the next couple months. And so a lot of questions really need to be around, what are you doing now to prepare for not just what's going to happen in the summer, but ultimately what's business going to look like in the fall and during the holiday season. And one of the things that I think is interesting to consider here is that by the time Q4 comes around and everyone's ready to go shopping, is your business one of those who's been thinking about what your marketing strategy looks like, creating those campaigns, and ultimately being able to launch something very strong? Or will you have been so focused about how you're recouping sales right now that you failed to kind of forecast and look into the future? So I would say, just as we've been saying kind of on a weekly basis here, if you can't do anything to impact what's happening in your market and in your space today, really start to spend the time to understand what it is you can be working on for 3, 6, 9 months, or even a year down the road. So I'm going to take some questions from our newsletter. Always, guys, if you have questions, feel free to drop them here into the Instagram Live, but then also, send them over in our newsletter, and you can email them to us directly at hello@scalingretail.com. So feel free to trickle in questions, and I'll be answering some as we go along. Okay, so another question that came in here was, I was in the process of launching one of my handbag lines, but I'm sourcing in China. Do you think it's a good time to order with everything that's going on? So guys, we're starting to see a lot of shipments and things open up from China. So if you do have existing manufacturing and production happening over there, you should start to see your orders start to trickle in. We're seeing about a 3 to 4 week delay in terms of shipments. So your products should be starting to trickle in, and I'm starting to see a lot of our clients get product in. A lot of times now the product is coming in through a boat as opposed to air, so do plan to spend a bit more time waiting. And then as far as how long it's going to take for those items to clear customs and duties, that I'm not sure. So I'm not sure what the protocol is going to look like as these products are shipping in. From what I've been told so far, with non-fashion related goods, it's been taking a while to clear products that are coming in, especially as we take a look at what kinds of workers are able to go and facilitate taking things off of these crates, offboarding them, and then kind of getting them to warehouses and fulfillment centers. So it looks like there's still a little bit of a backlog and some hangups here when it comes to the international shipments coming in, just in terms of the length of time. But if you do have products right now that are stuck internationally, they should be released soon. The other thing that we're seeing right now in places like Portugal and Spain, we're also starting to see manufacturing open up there as well. So that's very promising, especially for a lot of luxury or advanced contemporary brands that are producing over there. And then when we're looking at what's happening in India right now, it looks like a lot of sampling and manufacturing is starting to open up slowly. So not necessarily in full effect, but people are starting to get their samples done. So things are moving along a little, slowly but surely, things are moving along. On the retail side of things, what's been very interesting is to see a lot of small retail specialty stores start to diversify what their offerings are. So don't be surprised if you start to take a look, if you are one of those companies out there that are producing masks or other kinds of PPE stuff, or things that are kind of meant for frontline workers as well as for personal use. A lot of retail companies are now buying those kinds of goods to resell to the consumer base. So if that is a market that you have been exploring, the retail side of that is going to be something you'll want to spend some time investing in. Okay, the next question I have here is, should we scratch a summer collection and aim for a fall delivery? Depending on when your summer deliveries we're planning on hitting. So typically spring 1 hits around February, March, and then spring 2 usually will hit around May, June. And so right now we're kind of embarking on when spring 2 deliveries would hit, maybe even as early as April. So when it comes to how you should be looking at what those products are, I would take a look and figure out what of those items are really core summer items, what of those items can be transitional into fall, and I would try to split up your collection so you actually have product that you can be delivering more often within the next 3 to 6 months. Frequency and newness, which is something that we always focused on before this pandemic happened, is still something you're going to want to keep in mind. As we see a lot of great email campaigns coming out, as always, it's about what is new for your audience, what are the things that are exciting to them, and why should they keep coming back to you, and what should they be expecting. So if you do decide to split up your collections and hold back on items, I would definitely suggest looking at that as a longer term strategy so that your customers can start to expect a much more frequent delivery cadence, which I think is great for business to be able to do that. Hey guys, thanks for joining. All right, next question here. Which new products and services do I see coming from this time? So this is interesting. I got interviewed this morning from someone who's doing an article on impact investing and kind of where we see the market and the retail industry heading. And what I thought was really fascinating about her question is she asked me, well, what were some of the big changes that happened coming out of 2008? What were some of the big changes that were coming out of 2001? And what are some of the changes that I foresee coming out of what's happened now in 2020? And what was interesting is I hadn't really had a chance to reflect on that question. And here's what I thought. So basically, coming out of 2001 in San Francisco, all of a sudden, I'm from San Francisco, so all of a sudden we saw all these vacant real estate spaces, which ultimately changed the way in which space was being treated. So we basically went from, the dot-coms, which was the whole boom, everyone had space, San Francisco was a big epicenter of that, and then all of a sudden things crashed, and all these empty storefront spaces, and so many vacant spaces. And so what came out of that? Well, we actually start to see the rise of more modular real estate, shorter term leases, the rise of pop-up shops. When we're poised with the constraint of what do I do with all of this space, all of a sudden, landlords had to get a lot more creative about how they thought about space. And that posed that gave a really big opportunity to a lot of brands and companies who needed shorter term space. And so coming out of 2001, that was one of the most interesting things that I saw. And then fast forward to 2008, what I thought was really interesting is, once everything crashed, then we saw a huge rise in the need for the outlet business. So all of a sudden, the outlet business went from being a stepchild business to now products being developed and created specifically for that market. So coming out of 2008 was a huge shift to a secondary revenue stream that was ultimately seen at first as just a liquidator of product. Now all of a sudden, there were huge volume numbers that had to be comped. Shortly after that, 3-4 years later, we saw the rise of direct-to-consumer. So kind of hopping on the heels of what we saw with now this, secondary revenue stream of outlets, all of a sudden it went to how do we then provide these products to the consumer, still cutting out this middleman, right? How do we provide value and innovate against these kinds of price points and what the traditional retail models had on us? So direct-to-consumer, I thought, was a really interesting thing that came out of 2008. So now as we're looking to 2020 and we start to ask ourselves, what are the things that we might be able to forecast? Very difficult, right? Because obviously these things are much easier to reflect on when they're over. But let's think about this. So, what's very different about what happened in 2001 and 2008 were these were not health scares. These were very different kinds of recessions and issues that we were dealing with. Now what we're looking at is almost like cultural shifts, right? How do people start to relate to socializing again? How do people start to relate to health and wellness again? What does community mean? How is it that we're going to relate to things like environmental issues or transparency or things like that we were really on the brink of before this, right? A lot of brands that were focused on sustainability and ethical production were gaining quite a bit of steam in the market before this happened. And then all of a sudden retail halted and it's hard to know exactly where things are going to come out. However, I would like to think, and from what I'm seeing, that these brands that are focused on environmental issues, whether that is safer dyeing practices, whether that is using products that are organic, even on the perspective of fair trade or fair labor, there is going to be an increased shift on that simply because we're looking at environmental issues a lot more closely than we were before. Now, you've been seeing a little bit of some articles and reporting coming out about how we've cut so many carbon emissions, how things are a lot healthier, the air quality, we're not as reliant on oil, and all of those things are going to change. However, as soon as things open up, those things will change. But what's interesting is I think we've been able to see a lot of positive environmental things happen during this time of this crisis, that I think it'll actually prove to be very supportive and beneficial of brands who are looking to further explore sustainability and ethical production. So I think those two things might be correlated in some way. And then the other thing that's very interesting is that culturally in the United States, we've never really worn things like masks, right? We've never really paid too much attention to those kinds of things. That was really something that we would see coming out of, the Japanese market, for example. So there might be an opportunity here, and we might actually be seeing the rise of an entire new category of personal protection and what it means for hygiene, and what does those suite of products look like that help people feel like they are being responsible to themselves, that are being responsible to their loved ones, that's being responsible to their community. Also something there, I think, to explore. Beyond what it is to wear a mask, what are the other kinds of products and key items that someone might need in order to be able to feel safe, in order to help other people feel safe around them. So that is something that I think we should look at. And then as far as, where is brick and mortar retail going? Where are all the big box stores going? Look, a lot of these companies were already doing shitty before this whole thing happened. So it should really come as no surprise to see a continuation of these businesses that were already dying out to officially die out. It just so happens it's happening pretty quickly. However, guys, in the last 3 years, there have been so many bankruptcies that any traditional retailer that's been around for more than, 15 years has come under the gun. So to see this type of shift happen, I don't think should be really a shock to anybody. And honestly, I think the fact that this pandemic happened and there were forced furloughs and forced things that happened, I think just really sped up the crisis and the issue that would have happened with traditional retail anyways, which is if a model like Macy's is not really built for the way that consumers are shopping or the way that we want and need to do business, then we would already have to be considering what would happen to the labor of the people who were working in those environments when those kinds of companies did shut down. So the crappy thing is that it happened all at once. The upside to that is that the government is now providing much better benefits to people who are unemployed. So in some cases, you're seeing unemployed workers who are making more money today than they did with their regular paychecks. So how we kind of reabsorb retail labor, I think, will be another interesting thing, given that the rebounds of certain companies, I don't think will happen or happen as fast or happen in the same way. How we look at shopping and the way consumer shopping is shifting, it doesn't mean that brick and mortar retail stores won't exist. It means that the big box stores that really are no longer proving their value will die out. And so what does that mean for the labor market? And then also, how might that open up opportunities for small to medium-sized specialty stores? And then also looking at what the opportunities are in the space of e-commerce, right? Still a lot of opportunity there. Okay, let me see some other questions here, guys, and then we have about 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to hop off. Okay. Okay, so, this is interesting. Okay. So someone asked how technology can support in the wholesale space. What's been really interesting is there have been a lot of great technologies that have been launching. There's one that came out just a couple weeks ago. I mentioned it on Makers Row last week. It's called The Connection, CXN. And I think what we're going to start to find is as we move towards June, July, and August markets, what I think what'll be great to see actually is that in these June, July, August markets, there is going to be a shift towards these digital platforms in order to do business. So today I just got an email from Tex World that was really all about, how they were shifting their, their trade show that's all around fabrics and manufacturing, how they're looking to shift that digitally and move that online. Now, the challenging thing about doing something like that is when it comes to textiles, it's very, very difficult to have a strong understanding of what something feels like or what it ought to feel like through a digital platform. So what we're likely going to start to see then is kind of once these, Premier Vision and these other textile shows, once they start to go more digital, I would also hope to anticipate to see here a shift in these kind of consumable and shippable swatches in terms of being able to, see more volume go through in mail. So definitely expect to spend a little bit more on shipping and kind of allocate those resources towards placing a lot more sample orders on your swatches because you're going to have to be able to really get a chance to see and feel things in a way that you were able to do before in a much easier capacity. All right, Yasham, when it comes to selling through retail shops, we have to stop fit-ons and exchange. That will definitely affect our sales in the long run. How are we going to tackle it? I don't understand your question. When it comes to selling through retail shops, yes, we have to stop fit-ons and exchange. If you could please clarify your question and let me know give me maybe another iteration or kind of redefine it for me. I can answer it again. Okay, so what is the best way to source fabrics during pandemic? That's a really good question. So guys, the best thing that I would say for you is when it comes to looking for fabrics, obviously we all know places like Mood Fabrics and some of these other components online, that we can source from. You're going to have to spend a bit more money. So as opposed to taking that trip or heading to the fabric store right now, you're going to spend a little bit more money on ordering swatches and samples and talking to the sales reps on the phone. It's always a good idea to develop a relationship with sales reps. And here's another thing that's really interesting is you can ultimately, at the end of the day, take a look at any one of these websites. So like, let's say, Magic, for example, they have their sourcing trade show. At sourcing, they list every single vendor who's on sourcing is being listed on their website. So what I would suggest doing is actually contacting the customer service for sourcing at Magic and starting to ask them a little bit more about can you help me connect me to XYZ kinds of fabric suppliers or XYZ kinds of manufacturers or XYZ private labels. So I think these kinds of concierge services that these trade shows provide are going to be a huge opportunity for you. And I would definitely suggest doing so. Okay, let's try this question again. When it comes to selling through retail shops, we have to stop and try close on. That will affect our sales in the long run. Yeah, so absolutely. So when it comes to, people going into retail spaces and trying clothes on, at this point in time, I think it's important to make sure that you do have some sort of digital presence. So whether that digital presence is something that is, online, on Instagram, or if it's on a platform like an e-commerce or a Shopify platform, being able to showcase that product on a model, very, very important. One of the biggest issues that we have with e-com is not being able to show the products and not being able to show the fit. And when you're unable to show that, then you actually don't have as many conversions on those sales. So I think the most important thing when it comes to how do you convert right online, you're essentially looking for ways in which you can better tell that story of how something fits, what does the stretch look like, and how do you ultimately, tell those things through very simple photographs. Yes, you can obviously do virtual try-on, so that's a really good point. But when it comes to trying things on virtually, there's still a lot of things that need to be worked out with that technology, and it's still quite expensive. So if you're unable to kind of invest in virtual, unable to kind of invest in these more, virtual technologies to be able to support that, what I would suggest doing is kind of have a much better list of photographs, and make sure you have a lot of the product details and things like that. And also, guys, at the end of the day, when it comes to how people will be purchasing again, it's not as if retail is over, right? People will be shopping in stores again. The question is, will they be, shopping with masks on, right? How careful will people be? Will your sales associates be wearing masks? It's very difficult to know that. Oh, awesome. It's nice to know that we met at the LA Textile Show as well. It's really exciting. That was a wonderful, wonderful show. I love the LA Textile Show. It's really fun and exciting. All right, guys. So I'm going to take one more question, and then I will be signing off. We are doing these retail weeklies every week on Instagram, so please make sure that you tune in. And then this Friday, what I'm super excited about is we'll be doing a one-on-one live consultation this Friday with someone who emailed in, who's excited to be able to kind of get on live with us, and we'll be troubleshooting some of their business needs. This is something new that we're doing that we're really excited about. I often find that the best kinds of learnings, happen not only when you're learning, but also when you see the experiences of other people. And there's no better way to see those experiences than to do them live. So I'm excited to be able to do that this Friday. So stay tuned for that. Okay, the last question that I'll be taking is, okay. Thoughts on advertising during this time period. So this is very interesting, guys. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. Cost of acquisition on Facebook and Instagram has gotten quite high. And the reason why it's gotten quite high is because everyone's shopping online right now. So when you're looking at your type of product and you're looking at your market fit, it's very, very important that you are not just blindly investing your resources into new audiences unless you have the capacity to do so financially. This is actually going to be the best time for you guys to be doing funnels, and kind of retargeting through those funnels. So if you do have a pretty great list of people who shop from you, if you do have a good Instagram following, this is the time to be doing retargeting ads to be able to juice your following a little bit more. If you do have new product that's coming out, don't expect to see just lots of high ticket sales right now happening on newness. Companies like Saks, Elise Walker, a lot of these big guys are putting things on markdown. So we've been actually advising some of our clients, if you don't already have a planned launch, meaning it's going to be something new, press-worthy, right? You're a new business or a new brand. If it's just a new product and it's being released, you can go ahead and release it. Oh, I think I'm going to sneeze. You can go ahead and release it. But I wouldn't necessarily anticipate to see the highest amount of sales coming through with these new product releases. And if you can hold back on some of it, I would certainly hold back from it. All right, guys, that is all from me for this week on Instagram Live. I will be live again on Friday on this channel, and then I will also be back on Makers Row on Thursday. And Makers Row has been a really fantastic platform, and I'm really excited to continue to partner with them. So send me questions at hello@scalingretail.com. Make sure you guys sign up for our newsletter, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.